Okay, so what this talk's going to be about is things that I wish I was told about in law school. Would have saved me a lot of years of grief and lots of issues. One of the main things you need to understand is if you don't want to have a high stress life and you want good health, don't be a lawyer. Just kidding, kind of. You can still be a lawyer, but what you're going to have to do is spend as much time and effort on your personal development and your personal life and relationships as you do at the practice of law. A lot of law students and eventually lawyers are very ambitious, very motivated when it comes to their career, but then you end up neglecting other areas of your life that could end up hurting you in the long run. So, a little bit about me. First couple of years, I worked at a big firm. 2 years in a row, they screwed my coworkers and I on our bonuses. So be a little bit careful about agreeing to a low base salary with promised bonuses. At least get it written, because sometimes the bonuses don't happen. So my original law partner and I, we ended up leaving our firm and starting our own firm. And it got successful pretty quickly. We were making basically double the money for half the work, which was nice. And so things were going really well. And then my law partner passed away. So unexpected things happen. I ended up getting another partner and we were doing well also. And then we came across this interesting case. It was a car dealership that was basically engaged in massive fraud, lemon laundering vehicles. So what this dealership was doing was they were based out here in Arizona, and they would go to California to auction, and they would buy these vehicles that were declared lemons. These vehicles were bought back as defective because they had been repaired too many times or were in the shop for too long, so they're pretty much lemon vehicles. And it's okay to reacquire and sell those vehicles, but you have to provide disclosure to people. There's actually a written notification on the vehicles, and there's also a notification that buyers have to sell, and that way they're sure that people know what they're getting. And so what this dealership was doing was buying these vehicles at auction in California, mainly luxury vehicles, BMWs and Mercedes, and bringing them to Arizona. And then they were removing the written notifications from the vehicles, and they were forging people's signatures on the disclosure forms. So consumers, buyers had no idea what was going on, what they were actually getting. They usually didn't find out until they would go to trade in the vehicle, and then the dealership where they're trying to trade out the vehicle would tell them, hey, we're not taking this vehicle, it's a lemon vehicle, or they would only offer them a tiny fraction of what the vehicle would have been worth if it didn't have a lemon branding. So we had many people come to our firm about this issue. We ended up taking 5 cases. We didn't have the resources to do a class action, although it could have been a class action case. And at first, the owner of the dealership seemed to be like, okay, you got me, I'll just settle the case. Then all of a sudden, he changed his mind last minute and ended up hiring one of the biggest pit bull attorneys and law firms in the state, probably the biggest one. And so the next 2.5 years of my life were basically a living hell because of this. What this firm did is they were a much larger firm, so their strategy was to basically try and paper us to death. A typical case will have maybe 2-3 big motions: motion to dismiss, motion for summary judgment, maybe some motions in limine. That's a typical case. In these 5 cases, they filed several hundred motions. And so basically what happened was just checking the mail was a very unpleasant experience, because check the mail 3 or 4 brand new motions, also motions to reconsider. We would beat them almost on everything. If I had to quantify it, I would say we beat them on 98% of what they filed. But their purpose wasn't necessarily to even win these motions, it was to just try and bludgeon us to the point of submission, because they're taking time away from our other cases, taking time away from our lives, and that eventually we would just capitulate. And so it obviously started to become very stressful, because we would win on an issue, then they'd file a motion to reconsider, then they would appeal, they would file interlocutory appeals. I mean, they were just taking tons of time. And also personally attacking my law partner and I, filing motions for sanctions for frivolous reasons. They personally sued me in one of the cases. I got that dismissed, but it's still stressful to be sued for just doing your job. And my law partner, he was actually smart. The stress became overwhelming, so he started to get counseling. But me, I'm a tough guy. I don't need counseling. I don't need anybody to help me. Screw these guys, we're gonna beat them, and I don't care what they do. But what happened was the stress started to build up like crazy. Got to a point where I couldn't sleep, wake up in just night sweats, and just wanted to beat these guys so bad. And part of the problem is once we finally got to the point where these guys, they're doing frivolous things, they're abusing the system, so we asked the judges to sanction them, and the judges wouldn't sanction them. They would deny their motions, but they wouldn't punish them for what they did. So that was part of the problem. That was extremely frustrating. And you'll see this when you practice law. One of the most frustrating things as an attorney is when you make the correct legal arguments, you present everything properly, and sometimes the judge will just not follow the law. It's very expensive to appeal, so that's not always practical to do. And it's one of the biggest frustrations being an attorney. Another huge frustration that you need to be aware of, especially if you go into litigation, is one of your biggest headaches is going to be dealing with problem clients. There's people out there who are frankly crazy, and they might seem normal at first, but something happens in the case and they start to flip out, or you're not able to get them as much money as they want, and then all of a sudden they turn on you and attack you. And it's one of those things that you really need to be prepared for if you go into litigation. You gotta learn, conflict management. Basically, you have to learn how to be a psychologist, because you also have clients who scream and cry and act, again, crazy. So that's something that when I was in law school, I didn't really feel prepared for. I didn't realize that one of the biggest issues with being a lawyer is dealing with difficult clients. 10 to 20% of your clients will be 80% of your work, because they'll be constantly calling you, emailing you, complaining. They're distrustful of attorneys. So be ready to deal with client issues. So anyways, with these cases, what ended up happening is they finally cried uncle. Right on the eve of trial, they globally settled all the cases. The owner of the dealership was actually writing us checks for 2 years, which was nice. He couldn't even afford to pay it all at once. But at the end of this period, by that point, my relationship with the woman, when I originally met her, felt she was the girl of my dreams. It was amazing at first, but as these cases, took their toll on me, I'd come home stressed out when I wasn't myself, and she couldn't really understand what I was going through. I tried to explain it to her, but her attitude was like, well, you should just leave that at work. But it's hard to leave it at work when you're being flooded with all these emotions all the time. And so our relationship really deteriorated. By the end of these cases, it was a 4-year relationship. By the end of these cases, our relationship was just done. It wasn't salvageable. We ended up breaking up. And this is a woman I originally thought I was going to marry. And, it was extremely painful. Obviously brought up childhood traumas and stuff, the relationship ending. And so at this point, the other thing that happened is I'd been in a severe car accident. I was stopped at a red light, talking to my girlfriend at the time, and I was completely facing right, talking to her. And this lady hit us from behind, going 55 miles an hour. I guess she was late to work, and didn't see the car right in front of her, stopped at a red light, and so had whiplash sideways, and so had severe neck and back injuries and rib injuries because of that. I didn't even realize how badly hurt I was at first, and kept like working out, hitting the gym hard, and it got to the point where I was having neck spasms, back spasms, felt like I was getting stabbed in the back. I would get really, really bad strains where I couldn't turn my head. Luckily I could turn my head now, but I would be like this, not able to turn my head, just in severe pain. And again, that harmed the relationship. So we settled those cases. We also had a trial against Bentley in federal court. We won the trial. They appealed to the Ninth Circuit. We won the appeal. So we had a huge amount of attorney's fees in that case that they ended up paying out. So at this point, it was kind of an interesting dichotomy. I had had the most professional success I'd ever had in my life, had the most money I ever had in my life, but physically and emotionally, I was in the worst place I'd ever been in my life. Just extremely depressed, stressed, and a lot of physical pain. And it just got to the point where I just said, enough is enough. I can't keep living my life this way. Just focusing on the career to the detriment of everything else. And all the money in the world means nothing. All the nice stuff means nothing. The bling car, the nice house, it's worthless if your health and relationships are out of whack. It just doesn't make you happy. It gives you comfort. It gives you short-term stimulation to have the nice things, but long-term in your life, it doesn't make you happy. So, and there's one other thing. I was experimenting with dieting. I've been into nutrition for a long time, and I was on a low-fat diet. And by the way, don't go on low-fat diets. They're bad for you. I was losing hair. I was lethargic, so that added to the health issues. But anyways, at that point, I just decided enough is enough. And sometimes you have to hit bottom to get to that point, but I don't want anybody in here to have to hit bottom before you're like, I hate my life, what am I doing? I don't want you to get to that point. This can be prevented. But for me, that was the point, and I said, enough is enough. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to turn my life around. And I'm gonna put, from now on, I'm gonna put as much effort into my health and relationships as I have been putting into my career. And this is what you should be doing all along. Now look, your first year or two out of law school, it's gonna be crazy because you have a lot to learn. You are gonna have to put a lot of effort into your career. But long term, you can't keep going that way. You'll just burn out. It's impossible to only focus on career and not these other areas of your life. So this is what got me into self-development. And by self-development, I mean books about health, happiness, relationships, stress management, spirituality. And these books are amazing and will change your life. Some of these books are a person's lifetime of experience condensed into a book. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel, bang your head against the wall to figure certain things out. And I know as law students, all the reading you have to do, the last thing you want to hear is, hey, read more books. There's actually a solution to that, audiobooks. I've become addicted to audiobooks, and I remember in one book that I read, what they talked about is if you just listen to audiobooks when you drive, because we do so much driving these days, if you just listen to audiobooks when you drive, it's the equivalent to a semester or two of college a year. So that's how much knowledge you can get just by listening to audiobooks when you drive. And if you can add it to when you're doing, chores or working out, that'll give you even more time listening to audiobooks, so you don't need to read. And what I recommend too with some of these books that I'm going to recommend that you check out, listen to the audiobook multiple times or read the book multiple times. And here's the reason why. We only retain about 10 to 20% of what we read. And so if you really want the information to stick and to make positive changes in your life, then you need to listen to these books several times or read them several times. What can also help is if you write like just a little summary of the book, that'll help you remember the main points as well. So let's talk about several things several areas that will help you on your journey. The first one is stress management. Very important for attorneys. You're dealing with people's lives, you're dealing with big cases that affect companies or affect people, and it's inherently stressful. So the key to manage your stress is to have good routines and habits, and also to be consistent with what you do. Don't just do things occasionally. There's a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, highly recommended. And what the author talks about is it usually takes about 21 to 90 days to develop a habit, depending on what it is. But once you do, you really only need the willpower to develop the habit. That's the hard part. Once you develop the habit and it becomes, kind of goes into your subconscious, it's a lot easier. You don't even have to think twice about it. For example, brushing your teeth. It doesn't even cross your mind to do it. It's just a habit. And so here are some things to build routines and habits with. Meditation. Meditation is critical, especially for attorneys. We're in our heads a lot. We're just thinkers by nature. Meditation helps you clear your mind and rejuvenates you. And the key to meditation, because a lot of people have a hard time meditating. I had a very hard time getting into meditation. My brain was just, all over the place. And so with meditation, just start small. Start 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day right when you wake up or right before you go to sleep. Anybody can do 5 minutes. Once you develop the habit of doing 5 minutes a day, which again would take at least 21 days, possibly more, once you're used to doing that, slowly up the meditation time. Get it to, say, 10 minutes and then 15 minutes. And ideally, you should be doing at least 20 minutes a day of meditation. If you could do more, that's wonderful. But 20 minutes a day seems to be a really good point where you get great results. Yoga. Yoga is also great for making you centered, present, and relaxed. There's many types of yoga. Whichever kind you like, I suggest pursuing, doing that a couple times a week, once or twice a week, or more if you're into it. The other thing is exercise. Exercise is critical for stress management. It will raise your endorphins, your natural feel-good hormones, and studies actually show that meditation is more effective for lifting your mood than most antidepressants. So, highly recommend getting into exercise. And here's something that if you try, you might curse me the first couple of times you do it, but cold showers. And the way you do cold showers is start with a hot shower. It's good to have the contrast. And then about halfway through, turn it as cold as possible. Now, it's very unpleasant. However, it will lift your mood. Every time I take a cold shower, my mood is elevated afterwards. It's also good for your circulation, and it's good for your immune system. It helps contract your lymph nodes. And the other thing about cold showers is it actually strengthens your willpower, because it gets your mind used to being in uncomfortable situations. So for instance, obviously being an attorney, if you're going to be in court or you're going to have to give a presentation, it makes it easier to deal with the discomfort and just to do anything outside your comfort zone. So cold showers actually strengthen your willpower. But I see the faces. I know people are like, no way, I'm not taking a cold shower. And I was that way for a while, but cold showers are great. As far as a couple of supplements that you could take, they're natural and non-narcotic. I recommend taking theanine. Theanine is an amino acid that's found in tea, and so you can take theanine supplements. It's non-drowsy. And also magnesium. Magnesium is the relaxation mineral. It helps your muscles relax. And A couple of other things. There are trauma release exercises that I discovered by reading the book, The Revolutionary Trauma Release Process. It's by David Berceli. I've actually met him. He's a great guy. And I believe he actually teaches at ASU as well. And he's also got a new book called Shake the Pain Away. And what these exercises do is they fatigue your psoas muscles and they induce tremoring in your body. And the tremoring actually releases stress and trauma from your body. And it's actually a natural thing that we suppress. For instance, if somebody has a bad car accident, afterwards they might be kind of shaking. That's actually good. That's your body's natural way of releasing trauma and stress. So these exercises actually induce that. And a lot of people have some level of trauma, either from childhood or from bad events that have happened in their life, people who have died, bad family events, or just being alive. You know, if you just look at the news, it can be traumatic, the horrible things that happen sometimes. So this helps release that from your body so you feel more calm and centered. The other thing I recommend is network chiropractic. Now, the name is a little bit misleading. It's kind of a PC name, because what network chiropractic really is pressure point therapy that relaxes you. It releases stress from your body. It's kind of like energy balancing. And you know, I'm a skeptical attorney. I thought stuff like that was nonsense, but it actually works. And so highly recommend trying that. There's only a couple places in town that do it, but the one in Chandler is really good. It's called Living in Line. And you know, if there's something out of alignment, they'll adjust you, but it's mainly pressure point therapy. Something else that's also critically important is to maintain strong social connections. You know, especially being a law student, you have to study a lot. It's tough to stay in touch with people, but maintaining social connections is critical to your happiness and well-being. And studies show that it's actually one of the biggest factors in longevity, that people who have strong social connections live an average of 10 to 15 years longer. So definitely stay in touch with positive friends, with family. It's difficult to do, but do your best to maintain those social connections. Now, as far as self-development, there's lots of great books, life-changing books that you should definitely check out. And I'll just briefly give you a synopsis of these books. One of the best is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And the title's a little misleading. It's not just about money. Using the principles in this book, you can attract love into your life. You can attract anything that you want. And what the author talks about is how your mindset and your attitude and your beliefs are what attract good or bad into your life. And he gives ways that you can improve your attitude, improve your beliefs, be more positive. For instance, the book talks about visualization, visualizing positive outcomes. Also talks about affirmations. And affirmations, you know, kind of got a bad rap from Stuart Smalley. It's corny. Good enough and smart enough and doggone it, people like me. It doesn't work that way, okay? A couple of tips about affirmations. The key to make affirmations work is to say them with emotion and intensity. If you just look in the mirror and say, I can do it, I can do it, that's going to do nothing for you. Our memories are largely tied to emotion. So if you want to change your subconscious and have it work more for you, the way you do an affirmation is do it again with emotion and intensity. So instead of I can do it, be like, I can do it! I can do it! And you'll feel corny, but it'll have a much quicker effect. Another way to make affirmations work quicker is to give a reason why the affirmation is true. Because sometimes you'll be saying an affirmation and your brain will be like, yeah, right, but why? And then you'll feel corny. But it'll have a much quicker effect. Another way to make affirmations work quicker is to give a reason why the affirmation is true. Because sometimes you'll be saying an affirmation and your brain will be like, yeah, right, yeah, right, pal, I don't believe it. You know? So tie it to something that you already believe to be true. So, you know, I can do it because I'm a hard worker. I can do it because I'm persistent. Something that you know 100% to be true about yourself, and that will tie in to a belief that you want to believe more in your life. So that's Think and Grow Rich. Another book, which I don't have with me, is The New Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz and Dan Kennedy. It was originally written by Maxwell Maltz and updated by Dan Kennedy, who actually lives in Phoenix. And this is just an outstanding book. And Maxwell Maltz, he was a plastic surgeon. And he would do surgeries on patients, and what just totally flummoxed them is some patients didn't believe that anything had physically changed. So for instance, he would do a nose job for somebody, give them the perfect nose, and they would come in a couple of weeks later and say, you didn't do anything to my nose is still misshapen, or whatever. And even put a mirror to their face and they still didn't believe it. So what he figured out is that our mental self-image is actually, for an individual, even more powerful than physical reality. And so what psycho-cybernetics is about improving your self-image.